it was the first time I'd read a story like this where I felt incredibly like connected to a material. And I'm not from I didn't grow up on a farm in rural Arkansas. I'm not from middle America. You know, my grandma didn't burn down my farm. Like I didn't like have that sort of thing. Yet when I read this, I was so incredibly moved by sort of this like human point of view that the stories, it was telling a very human story. I grew up my parents are Korean immigrants. That scene where Monica and Jacob are arguing was like something that I witnessed a lot growing up, and not because, and my parents are still together, and it wasn't because of anything other than like, I never really thought like, fuck, how hard must it have been for them coming to a new country, not being able to speak the language fluently, having kids to like take care of. And in a way I was like, I've never seen a story that I resonated personally so much to. And so that's kind of like what got me really excited about it. Like we went back and forth a lot on like how much Korean should there be? Should there be Korean? And what I loved about the story and his writing was how authentic it felt. And I do think there's like universality and specificity. And I was like, I actually think making this thing as authentic as we can will be more universal to the people watching it.
그럼 우리가 한 약속은 여기선 당신도 일할 수 있고 난 가든을 만들 수 있잖아.
로저스 가드 5에이커는 살 수 있잖아.
아, 취미로 하는 거면 5에이커로 충분하겠지. 내 꿈은 50에이커야.
Growing up, my parents spoke Korean, only Korean with me. Like they rarely spoke English. So you know, that's authentically how it was growing up. And Isaac's parents were the same way. Steven's parents were the same way. So it seemed weird to me to like make them speak English. We all live in the real world and we all experience things, and what we experience is real to us. I do think there's like, if you can put that and capture that on film or, you know, in a movie or whatever, in a TV show, people can feel that. We live in reality every day. So if you then see the reality on the screen, I think you can have some sort of connection. I knew Young had worked on The Farewell, and I looked at some other things, and I knew her agent, so I was like, hey, can I meet with her? And then when I met with Young, she sent the board, and then after the meeting, I was like, I don't know if she wants. I think she hates this movie.
Wait, what? Why? Why did you think that?
She was. This is what I loved about her. And after I called, like I was talking to her agent, and she was like, "So how'd it go?" And I was like, "She's really Korean, which I love." But
she's really Korean.
During our meeting, she was like giving me all these like, she was like making some notes on the script, which I thought were actually really great. And I was like, "Oh wait, does she like not like this?" And then I think I was speaking to her agent, and she's like, "Oh my God, she wants to do this." And I was like, oh, okay, great.
I love the script. That's why I want to get interview, you know, and I knew this is low budget and, you know, like probably it's going to be really tough and blah, blah, blah. But I love the script. But as a Korean, because I'm not even Korean American, like Korean.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always see negative first. So probably I was a little bit criticized. I didn't mean to though. And I didn't
You mean
know.
like criticizing the Korean aspects of the script?
No, it's not about Korean aspect. It's more like about, as a filmmaker, I was like what I thought about character, about this story, or about the narrative, how it goes, something like that. So Korean usually seeing more like judgmental, I guess, or more like seeing negative first, because we all know what is a good thing. Like, so I don't want to, I don't want to say like, oh, this is great script, I love it, and blah, blah. You know, it's a little bit awkward for me all the time. Of course, it was interview, but I want to be honest, you know, what I think about the script, because I want to work on with this project. So I want to give her my note, because it's also very important.
ultimately a good producer, I think, supports their director. And he has got to be one of the most humble and like, he's also a fast writer in some regards. Like we would have notes and then a note session, and then I'd get like a new draft like 5 days later, which I was like, oh, amazing. He's great. He's a huge collaborator, but that doesn't, I'm not saying that he's like a pushover by any means. Like he has a very strong point of view in terms of what he wants. And he's very articulate. And if we don't agree on something, explaining why he doesn't, and he's like pretty much always right. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, great. I understand that. And then he has no ego in terms of like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Like I'm going to change that. I'll make that note or change that thing. And in that regard, he was an amazing director to work with.
Isaac was like really nice director. He never get angry, you know, even we had lots of challenging things. He didn't really upset, and you know, he always kind of, you know, tried to solve the problem before he got, you know, he get angry or he kind of upset. So it's he always like, he's also very open mind, you know. If I suggest something, he always listen. So it's actually really good to work with him. I researched more about American stuff because I didn't grow up here. Even I have no idea what Arkansas look like. You know, I have no idea about farm life because I never grew up that kind of like countryside, even in Korea. So I researched some kind of geography things, and because it was pretty important in the script about the land. And I think that's important to show as a production designer, what kind of location we need to get. When we had meeting, we talk about a little bit about Korean stuff, but not much because it's already in the script even, what Isaac wants. What about trailer and all like kind of different elements about American life. I don't think trailer was biggest challenge. It was the main set, so it's important.
Yeah.
But it's actually not too bad, not really difficult to make it, because even though we don't have enough budget, actually Oklahoma, Tulsa, they have lots of resource and it's very cheap. And also every single time when I see the stuff, I always negotiate with people like, oh, I need this one, like cut this like half discount for me. I have no money and I'm from Korea, you need to.
Oh, is that what you would do? You would say?
Yeah.
So Brad Pitt never visited the set, right?
He was busy shooting something else at the time.
So Oklahoma wasn't impossible to make this movie in young. You just had to do the work to find the right things.
Yeah, I mean, you can make movie anywhere, I think.
Did you talk about other movies as influences?
No, I think mostly we are talking about, we bring our own family photo basically.
Oh.
So I just show his family photo during that time, like 1980, 1970, and I also bring my family photo and my uncle's photo. So we kind of like compare, this is great, and we can inspiration from this, and then some like Korean immigrant stuff. I don't think we look any kind of movie.
I actually think Isaac, and myself included, really trusted Young's sort of interpretation. And if you even go back on this, like some of the interior, all this stuff is incredibly specific to anyone who grew up in sort of this household, like the wall hangings, the calligraphy placards, the dishes in the background, like all that stuff is pretty specific. And I think once he read it, he came up with a couple sketches and he sent them over to Isaac, and Isaac was listening to, I think it was the, used to be called Tall Grass, but I think it's called something else now. And so Isaac could listen to that while he was.
Kind of that main theme that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he said that it kind of helped him. It helped his like kind of his the tone of the movie, and like creating some of those montages, which are definitely, you can tell the music and the images are working together. So it must have been such a bonus to have that music beforehand.
Yeah, it's a as a producer, I was like, okay, note to self.
Well, that's a good find. I think you found that guy.
And
I think-
I love him. He's a great human being. He's a super sweet dude. I think I was running away a little bit from my own identity for a long time, like not wanting, I think just because like society kind of puts like these hyphenates in your identity, right? So I'm not like an American, I'm an Asian American or a Korean American. It's a constant reminder. And I think I fought that for a long time, not wanting to be put in some sort of box. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to like make Asian movies just because I'm Asian. And so when I read this script, though, it was beyond that. It was about like this human element, about an emotional connection, and I also think like at that point in my life, I didn't really like understand some of my own parents' like struggles when they got here. It's like, and the effect it had on my own upbringing. So I think this is a thing that a lot of people might relate to. I don't know. At least for me, I think growing up, right? Like you're really close with your parents. And then as you get older, the sort of like cultural difference creates a inevitable and like kind of like unpreventable sort of separation and gap between you and your parents on a cultural sort of thing. Like, as I grew up and I went to an American school, like wanted to hang out with my friends more. And my parents though are still very Korean. Like there's a bit of like that space as an immigrant kid that you just experience. And I don't think I ever like acknowledged that space or gave it any sort of credit or gave it any sort of attention. And it was a big gap in my own life and in my own, and learning to understand myself. And so this film, I think, like really helped sort of fill that gap in for me, and has been really like a moving experience, even in my own family and with my parents and with my aunts and uncles and all that stuff. For that, like, yeah, I'll be like forever changed by that sort of experience.